Hello, I'm Jordan.
I'm Chad.
We
And
are
our
KAJAM,
KAJAM.
and this is the game forged in the fires of Norfair, the one to rule them all, queen of video games. Nintendo presents Metroid 3.
You know they're making a 5th of this game.
I don't believe it.
Oh my god, one of the absolute best title screens by far. Just
Incredible
look
title
at that.
screen. Super
Look at the
Metroid.
colors. Even
Yes.
without any scan lines on it, this looks fucking beautiful.
Such a foreboding tone right from the start. I want to wait on here just a second because
Oh, it's the baby.
before we do anything in Super Metroid, we are offered the attract screen.
The trailer, if you will.
In the attract screen, when you first start the game, nothing too remarkable. It shows us, a little bit of what's in store. But it does give us a little glimpse into some of the abilities that we're able to use. And
Kind of giving us a glimpse into the personality of Samus here.
Yeah,
it's like they're like role playing as
they're kind of
Samus.
They're performing it really, really well. And something that we'll see, or we may or may not see, is that if you have a full save file in Super Metroid and you go to the attract screen, it shows you all kinds of abilities and like secret hidden moves that you never would have known about.
That's
teaches you how to bomb jump, teaches you how to crystal flash. It has all of that stuff just here, hidden on the attract screen for experienced players. It's begging you to replay it.
That's a really cool way to do that.
And as we've discussed, as we will discuss, I have replayed this game more times than I can feasibly count.
See, I really like this game, but yeah, I don't love this game. It's a very important game to me and to my history, especially with Jordan. This is one of the earliest games that we ever discussed together when we first met.
Yeah.
But I very recently discovered that my favorite Metroid game is Metroid 2.
As you can find in another episode on the show. But let's get started. Super Metroid is maybe, very possibly, my favorite video game ever. And it's up there with the very best. I cannot stress enough.
Last Metroid.
Oh,
this is going to be a gush fest.
The galaxy is at peace.
Some of the best video game voice acting.
This iconic intro. See, I hadn't played a single Metroid game before I played Super Metroid. I got into it when it came out on the Wii U in 2013. I picked it up and I tried it, and I wasn't really accustomed to games with this kind of atmosphere and tone, and it sort of freaked me out. I left it behind for a little bit before coming back in 2016, and just adoring it, everything about it. But what I loved more than anything, as we'll find, is just how many ways there are to get around this game. But right now, Samus is telling us about her previous adventures, her reputation as this legendary, incredible bounty hunter. We see the events of Metroid 1 and 2.
Here's the ending of Metroid 2.
Metroid is committed so completely to its continuity.
I like that in this retelling, she aims her gun at it,
and we see
but
like
then
that's
decides
also
not to shoot.
That's also a bit of a tutorial thing because it shows you that you can aim diagonally, something you could not do in the previous two games at all. She personally delivered it to the Galactic Research Station at Ceres.
The baby.
Thanks for the Metroid. Thanks for the Samus Metroid. The scientist's findings are astounding. So this is a setup that's gonna come into play way later. Like the Metroids universally have been this massive threat. We've only seen a little bit at the end of Metroid 2 of that they're capable of being friendly, but utilized for the good of civilization. That's a big claim. And yet, the Metroid would not be safe for long.
Man, what an opening. What a fantastic opening.
And those are the only... That's the only dialogue, the only monologue, really, that we'll get in the entire, the entire thing. Samus will not speak another word.
Oh my god, the blue. Look at the blue.
Look at the blue.
Oh my god.
This, I mean...
We reference this... I reference this blue in our Zelda 2 video.
This is one of the greatest and most subtle pieces of tutorialization in video games. Like, if you've ever watched the video by...
the best blues in video games.
Ronnie Ani Edwards, rest in peace. He did a wonderful breakdown on all of the little teaching moments that happen just in this one area.
I should rewatch that video.
And back in the title screen, we have these dead scientists, but the Metroid is gone.
The title screen. That's so good because the title screen shows us the Metroid would be there.
It's already a setup here.
Like this game, it took all the right cues from Metroid 2's visual storytelling.
It expanded on it dramatically, in my opinion. We find the Metroid, but someone's waiting for us.
Oh my god, I love Ridley. I'm going to comment many times. The bosses in this game use sound effects that are straight out of Showa-era Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
Which is one of my... I'm a huge fan of the old Godzilla movies. So this is one of my favorite things in video games. I don't know why, I don't know how they legally did this, but that is, with virtually little change, straight up a Godzilla monster roar.
I'm gonna see if I can get him to drop it.
The music, his sprite work is so good.
So much more intimidating than he ever was on the NES. We don't really know how
the NES sprites sucked.
Ridley returned, but it doesn't really matter.
Ridley's just...
This is his best appearance in the whole series. Most significant.
Look at that
and he got me with that
spin.
tail whip. And he rushes into the foreground. Presumably, he left an explosive present for us here. We've got to get the hell out.
Metroid 1 ends in a self-destruct escape sequence. This game must begin with one.
It ups the ante right at the beginning by beginning the way that Metroid 1 ended. And as we'll see, it is completely committed to expanding upon everything. Every little tiny scrap of design that the first game established.
And the second game. There's a lot of this game that takes from the second game.
But structurally, it is very much a sequel, a reimagining of Metroid 1.
So perhaps now's a good time to mention, I'm not the biggest fan of the SNES. I am not a SNESer at heart. I used to be more favorable toward SNES games, but as the years went by, somehow I ended up loving the NES.
Check out that transition.
That's beautiful. I ended up loving the NES, and there's just something about SNES visuals and sound and even game design philosophy that does not really touch on me too often, too strongly. But this is absolutely one of my favorite SNES games, if not my favorite.
Meanwhile, the SNES is probably my favorite console of all time, so there's a bit of a rift between us there.
Yeah.
But as we...
You do not want to know my opinions on Chrono Trigger.
Though we will receive them one day.
God forbid I start talking about Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, might want to keep you away from that one.
Yeah.
So, I love the implication in that transition. Samus just goes to... She follows Ridley, she knows he's going to be there, to Zebes without a word. Even though she's just been attacked, just been beaten up. We're just going straight to the source.
And right here,
we are at the site where Metroid 1 ended. That room we just fell through was the escape hatch in Metroid 1, and now...
It's genius. It's incredible.
We are traversing the final zone of the original game. And yet, it's not really about nostalgia. As the Geek Critique points out in his video, it's about demonstrating how much time has passed. And that's a very different thing. Not about bringing us back, but showing us the future.
It's telling a story, not simply attempting to bite at our emotions.
Right. And here we get the morphing ball. Or the morph ball, as it's better known.
Why is it called
And
the
suddenly-
morphing? Oh, I love that. I love the eye.
Suddenly, the planet's starting to light up. We've seen nothing up to this point, and we can morph ball down this way. This is exactly how Metroid 1 began, but Metroid 1 didn't have a wall jump. The best mechanic in
God.
video games.
Yeah, that wall jump's pretty big.
Now, the wall jump gets some scrutiny for being hard to perform, but it completely transforms the game. It is the most rewarding thing to master.
Jordan and I, well, really more so Jordan. Jordan talks about this wall jump all the time.
Definitely.
I mean, if you like this wall jump so much, Jordan, why don't you just marry it at this point?
Well, maybe I will.
Okay, I would accept that.
Yeah.
I'd support you.
Yeah, you better.
It's a really good wall jump. It was a little weird to figure out at first, but like after I performed it like 2 times, I can now turn the game on. As someone who's barely played this game, I can turn the game on and pretty flawlessly execute the wall jumps.
Yeah,
And
once
it
you
feels
get it,
very good.
once you get it, you just get it. You have a feel for it. And it's logical in the way that it works. You push away from the wall and you jump. You're going to see like this little frame of animation where she's pushing away. And you might that might signal to you that it's possible to wall jump. You might do it on accident a few times before figuring it out. But it's natural. Those heads turn as we ascend.
That's amazing.
This elevator transition. So
I
we
mean,
went down,
already
we got some missiles.
This game has souped up the visual, atmosphere building, storytelling methods of Metroid 2, and then it's just doing them like it's nothing, just out of the blue. It just does it all the time in this
The
game.
space pirates have come to ambush us here.
Like this room is lit up now. The room was not like this earlier, correct?
Correct. We had a bit of a smog, but now the planet has come to life. They know we're here, and they're gonna kill us.
They're hunting you, and you're
Trying
hunting.
not to be a little to rush through this too quickly.
You are hunting the last Metroid that you spared in the previous game.
Yeah.
It's like instead of in Metroid 2 you're going down SR388 to hunt the Metroids and destroy them. This entire game is about you hunting a Metroid
To
that you
save
did
it.
not destroy so that you might save it. And the ending of this game, as seems to be a running theme for a bunch of these Metroid games, the ending absolutely nails it.
The first Metroid had kind of a weirdly mature subject matter for the time. We weren't saving a princess or a kingdom. We were trying to dismantle a space pirate organization from using a bioweapon to wreak havoc on the galaxy. It's not like a super complex issue, really, but it's more disturbing.
It's pretty different, especially for like a Nintendo game. Like Metroid feels like, compared to stuff like Dragon Quest or Mario or Zelda or Pokemon, Metroid has kind of always seemed to be pretty distinct, and maybe that's a part of why it's always been a bit more niche.
Here we've got the Morph Ball Bomb. Gives us a little bit of an explanation on how we can use it, but doesn't tell us what it is. We have to find that out for ourselves. But the only friendly face we've encountered in this planet so far. It's already coming to life. Now, when I first played this game, I found this incredibly freaky. I found it really disturbing.
He was pretty hard first time I played.
How his head pops off after a while. You can You can kill him pretty quickly, but
If you're good.
the first time I
I'm
was
not
not
good.
accustomed to such creatures.
And I mean,
Try this
it
once.
might seem like at many points, it might seem to people who aren't too familiar that Jordan here is absolutely blasting through this game. And he is. For myself, as someone who's not really nearly as familiar with the game or who has played it as much, when I turn on Super Metroid, I take it very slowly, very methodically, and my memory's not the best. So I kind of have to explore around and get my bearings on areas. But Jordan has absolutely, he's pretty much mastered the game to a significant degree.
More or less.
He can speed through it, and he's zooming through and making use of all these little tricks at his disposal to create a game experience that is not at all dissimilar to the way speedrunners might engage with a video game.
This game was very responsible for putting speedrunning on the map, and I want to touch on why. Because, I mean, not only does it time how long it takes for you to beat the game, Metroid 1 and 2 did that as well, but the beginning of the game makes such a point to make note of Samus's reputation.
No, go back. Go shove the room.
Oh, okay, yeah. I normally skip it. Make such a point to reference Samus's accomplishments, her reputation, her ability as a bounty hunter. And here, I'll take it slow here. And so when you play the game, you want to feel like you are this powerful bounty hunter character, but you're not going to be the first time around. You're not going to know how to pull off all of these tricks. Now, here are the boss statues. Even if you don't recognize the others, we've already seen Ridley. We know there's something suspicious. Come back after you kill one of these guys and see what happens. It doesn't need to tell us anything more than that.
When I saw that, I was like, well, now I know what my goal is. And the game didn't need to use words to tell me.
And I think maybe, okay, before I go on about what I was going to mention about the speedrunning, or the psychology of the game, notice how distinct this room is, how distinct the boss statue room is in terms of their audio visual presentation. The game keeps hitting us with all of these rooms that feel completely different from one another. And that's crucial because this game is all about exploration. It's all about showing us new places that look completely different from the others. And it's got a map, but you almost don't need it because it gives you such distinct landmarks and it gives you so many memorable areas to hold in your brain.
My memory's garbage, and I remembered my way around the majority of this game pretty well.
On a second playthrough, you're just going to get it. You're going to absolutely tear through it. Or at least I kind of did when I got into replaying him. Oh my god. The lead into the music.
This song is great.
This area is completely different. Now, I'm gonna kind of go through it pretty quickly, but I want to give you guys the sense of just how atmospheric this game can be. I'm gonna pull off a trick here, and I'll continue to talk about speedrunning psychology and all that ludonarrative stuff. Oh,
I thought you got it first try.
I missed it that time.
What he's performing here is a trick known as the mock ball trick.
And it's a little bit of a sticking point between Chad and I that it exists.
Well, first let's explain. The mock ball is performed by gaining up speed and then moving through a door transition with all that momentum, but jumping just before the transition so that you can keep that momentum and travel through the air, and then mid-air morph into the morph ball so you can keep that momentum going as I want to stress, inside the morph ball.
You don't have to do it through a door transition. It's possible to do it without that, but in this circumstance, that's just how it is.
And that is a completely optional, perhaps intended, perhaps unintended trick of the game's mechanics that you can perform if you know of it.
But intended or not,
and if you don't know it, you would have to go somewhere completely different. There's an entire boss that you skip if you perform this trick.
Well, you
which
can skip.
saves.
You don't need to skip. But
No,
every
but
speedrunner,
the
every
thing is,
speedrunner on the internet
it saves time.
it skips that boss if you're doing an any percent run. So much so that they actually have a spore spawn percent just for
Spore
fighting
Spawn's the
that
name
guy
of the boss.
specifically. We'll see him
Spore
because I'm gonna go over there and fight him.
Okay, Spores. I love Spore Spawn, and I guess we can dive into that thing now if you want to. If you if you
No.
don't want to.
Well, first
did you
I
want to
want
finish your thought?
Yeah, first I want to say that as you know when you first played the game, like Samus feels kind of weird compared to Mario, compared to
Very
Donkey Kong,
weird.
other platforming
Link.
protagonists.
Link and Zelda 2.
Like she's got this really floaty jump. Got two kinds of
Really?
jumps that change when you're moving. You gotta like you're locked into crouching. You crouch twice to go into a morph ball. It like the base moveset of Samus is so much more complicated than your average platforming protagonist. And so when you first play, inevitably you're gonna be a little bit.
You feel
You're gonna
kind
be a
of
little
lost.
bit clumsy.
Yeah.
Gonna be a little bit awkward.
Clumsy is a good word for it.
And when
You
you
definitely feel clumsy.
and when you get a little bit more acquainted with the way that the game works, gradually you begin to build up this feeling that you're becoming worthy of the Samus Aran moniker. Like you are
Of the role of Samus.
you are performing the role more accurately, more just trying to do a funny thing here. You are becoming Samus as you're getting better at the game and replaying it and performing the task well. And this is kind of a sticking point among fans and even among us.
Oh, look at
Yeah, they even
look at
leave
the-
this debris underneath them.
it looks like it's got to be droppings of some
Yeah.
kind. Or maybe
Um,
food waste.
It's kind of a sticking point, but at the end of the game, the faster you go, the more of Samus that you see. And I know it's kind of it is a sort of weird way to portray the idea, and I can't even say absolutely that Yoshio Sakamoto and the team had this in mind when they made the game. But to me,
For clarity, at the end of the game, depending on how well you performed, Samus will take off more of her clothes.
more of her suit, not her clothes.
They're her
underneath the
clothes.
suit.
They are her clothes.
It's her power suit, and so for me at least, it represents you becoming the character. Like if you beat this game slow enough, she's not even gonna take off her helmet. If you do it a little bit faster, she'll only take off part of her helmet. If you do it a little
And
faster.
only when you've truly, fully realized yourself within the role of Samus,
If you did
do
it the
you
way
attain
Samus,
this more intimate view of Samus the human, the person inside the suit.
right? And
I think it
that's a
is
big
kind
part
of
it
beautiful.
for me.
It is kind of for me. It bothers me. It feels a little weird and awkward. It feels
think
as
it
if
definitely-
I'm being.
Definitely could have been executed better, but within the way that this game works,
Spore Spawn.
I'm much more inclined to feel that it is a player avatar thing. It's more about their connection.
I can absolutely understand that
Like
that
at the
interpretation and that perception of it.
at the beginning of the game, like Samus talks about all of these events in the past tense. She's already done it. All you're doing is reenacting the adventure, and depending on how close you got, how much like Samus you were able to be, that's how much you're, the closeness between you and the character is established at the end.
I definitely feel that is a very valid interpretation of that. Like that, it makes sense. It works. It makes sense, and because of that, it doesn't bother me too much. But I'm a little bit more. I lean a little bit more into the side of feeling that it feels kind of a little bit gross.
Like I think later
to
games
sort of be rewarded with seeing more of Samus's skin if I do better at the game, and it's hard for me to. Oh God, that's incredible. He dies, and then the whole arena, not just him,
the whole
withers
room.
away, which implies that these roots, these backgrounds, these walls, these floors, are in some way a part of Spore Spawn's body. He is a very large fungal sort of creature that is forming the environment. That's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, the ending thing, I see it both ways, and I think that your perception of it makes good sense.
As someone who has played the game many times, it's hard not to, like, as you're slowly striving for the best ending, that's how I began to feel anyway. And that's how I still feel about it. But I think that the later games lean much harder into the... And I don't really think that the developers were really thinking about it this way. It's just the way that it comes across, personally. Because in later games, they lean way harder into the supermodel Samus look. And I can't say that it totally works for me.
Sort of bungle her character design. I think her design was probably best in Metroid Prime. The only Metroid game I played before I played Super Metroid was when I was like really little. I played Prime 3. I don't think I beat it, and I didn't remember a thing. I still don't remember a thing of that game. So I count Super Metroid as my first Metroid game. And it was okay. First, I want to comment. I love this area of the game in terms of the environment. This is definitely my favorite part of the game. You go through these green, lush, beautiful plant environments with all these flowers and flower-like enemies, and you get the sense that this is a thriving, lush, subterranean jungle. And then you move into these segments where everything is this reddish gray, and there's these flakes falling from the ceiling of the caves. And my personal favorite word is the word detritus or detritus, which essentially means the bits of organic or inorganic matter that rest on the ground and in forests or in waters. It is the junk and the dust, the gunk that accumulates basically on the floors of the world, comprising largely dead organic material. And my interpretation of these what I call detritus rooms in Super Metroid is that this forest is decaying in parts, and there are these scavengers, and oh god, this song is good. I'll cut to the chase. I like a lot of the environments in this game. I think they do some beautiful, very subtle environmental, ecological storytelling that I appreciate deeply.
So this
is the best song in the game.
It is the best song in the game. Note the pacing that has been happening here with the environments. Like, we've been just moving. Almost every room has something really unique about it that helps it stand out. The music keeps changing. The environments keep evolving. You won't know, you probably won't be good enough to do the wall jump to get up here. And you might not even know that you can use the super missiles to kill those rippers that bar your way.
But when you do know, you can do it.
You can do it. I'm not going to go all the way to Fantoon right now, the second boss, but it's very possible for me to go and challenge him right now, as I am. I just want to highlight the freedom that this game allows, that you earn as you play more of the game.
Look at Metroid 2. These guys leave behind these little sheddings that they crawl out of.
Yeah.
And it's just, now they're just casually doing that to portray this ecosystem in a much less significant way. Like, that's just an animal that does this.
As you get better at navigating the setting,
Got these carnivorous plants.
More attuned to Samus's moveset, you can move through Super Metroid in ways that you might not have been able to imagine the first time through. That you might have thought you needed these power-ups, that you needed all of these upgrades. And, to build up your arsenal to brave these different parts of the game that look impassable. But it gives you so many tools, and so much... The skill ceiling is so high that speedrunners are still achieving new world records in this game to this day.
God, look at the animations. I love this. This is one of my favorite enemies in the game. I mean, I'm calling him an enemy, but he's hardly an enemy. He's just hanging out.
Yeah,
and he happens to
being a
hurt you.
jerk.
Look at these weird cactuses on legs. I love those guys. Really good enemy designs, really good environments in this game. And that's probably my favorite aspects of Super Metroid are its visuals, its environments, its monsters. For me, it's not really as much about the improving at the game and speeding through it and learning these tricks and mastering being Samus. For me, it's more about the atmosphere, and that explains why Metroid 2 is my favorite. But I think it's really beautiful just how differently two people who like or love Super Metroid can appreciate it. Jordan and I have similar opinions on many games and radically different opinions on other games. And Super Metroid is a game that sort of formed the backbone. It was the first game that we truly began discussing together as game design nerds. This is the game that turned me into a game design nerd. Even if it's a game that I've by now outgrown and found all other games that inspire me more. It's a beautiful, beautiful little game design handbook of a thing.
It's such a
Look at these antlions. This guy's based on an antlion, which is like a little bug that digs into the sand and then nips at stuff that fall in. It's a very common video game enemy trope, but they're just portrayed so interestingly in Super Metroid. Oh, you've got the tunnel. This pipe rules.
I want to note before we move on too much. I mean, we'll come back to this pipe later, but that with the super missiles, with the power bombs, I could have. There are two places where you can get your first set of super missiles, and we're just gonna go here.
I love this one. This is where I learned how to do the wall jump, I think.
Yeah. Here. There we go.
Yeah, this is where I learned how to do the wall jump.
There are three places in the game where you can get your first set of power bombs, and as long as you're good enough, you can reach any of them. And depending on which one you'll go through first, or you'll get to first, it's going to alter the shape of your playthrough. Now I got a set that was up there in Red Brinstar, but there are a couple of them in Norfair. The one that the game expects you to get on the first playthrough requires a lot of backtracking to obtain. But we could just grab them on the first go. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there are only two sets, but I can...
It's semantic nonsense.
But it expects you to get that set of power bombs using the ice beam, which we'll get down here, and the high jump boots. But we didn't need that. We didn't need any of it.
With some relatively simple tricks, like not even like this game has a lot of really fucky, glitchy feeling tricks in it, but the majority of actions you can perform, like just using the wall jumps and maybe stuff with the morph ball, you can achieve so much in this game with just your knowledge and your ability to execute. With skill and knowledge, you can master this game. You can master this game perhaps more than you can master a lot of other games. This is a game that is called a Metroidvania. It is a second piece of, or a first piece of the two-piece puzzle that I believe now is used to define the genre. But Super Metroid and Castlevania Symphony of the Night, in my opinion, do not have that much in common.
Well, we'll get into that discussion after Frayed.
I mean, after this guy.
So I want to stress that
I love this guy.
On a first playthrough, the game expects you...
Oh my god, he's cool. He's so big. He's so big.
To go down that elevator into Norfair, and then get the high jump boots, use the map to discover that this region exists, because you can pick up a map earlier in Brinstar.
That's straight up Titanosaurus roars.
But if you know where all that stuff is, like in Dragon Quest III, the only thing that's keeping you from getting here is information.
Mm-hmm.
Information and a little bit of skill, a little bit of reflex. But that's all you need to do to get the Varia suit.
And there is a lot of that in Castlevania Symphony of the Night, but I think Super Metroid does does so much better at its world, at its location, its setting and its atmosphere for me. Symphony of the Night, the castle is it's awesome. It's really cool, but it doesn't feel like it feels a lot more artificial. And I guess it probably should feel more artificial, but this Super Metroid setting speaks to me so much more strongly. And it feels as if its mechanics are a lot more elegantly executed.
I played Symphony of the Night semi-recently, like half a year ago, for the first time, and it was pretty striking to find that it's kind of... I don't mean to be derogatory about Symphony of the Night. Good game for sure.
Yeah, I had fun.
But,
that's a good game.
But it's kind of a mess of ideas, and it doesn't really... It can't
it's not
really
as good
settle.
as Diablo 1.
It can't really settle on whether it wants to be an action RPG or a...
Gotta stick to you.
We got him. Whether it wants to be an action RPG or a Metroid-style game or a weird kind of hybrid of A Link to the Past, and I don't know what it really wants to be. Like, it has elements that carry over from the arcade-style Castlevania. It's definitely impressive because it doesn't compromise. It even has like these Street Fighter-style combo spells you can do.
It's pretty fun.
It's incredibly full, and Igarashi's
it's a game
goal
that is filled to the brim.
Igarashi goal was to keep that game out of the bargain bin, and I think he succeeded. But the result is a much less focused product. Like everything in Super Metroid feels necessary to it. And with a couple of exceptions, I could criticize certain aspects of Super Metroid, and I may, for the sake of offering a balanced point of view. But it's pretty difficult for me to...
I don't like this game as much as you do, and I can hardly think of anything to criticize. I just don't personally love the aesthetics that much.
I mean, come on, look at this. Look at the waving backgrounds that signify the heat.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. It's so cool in concept, but I'm just an earlier 2D fiend, I guess. I used to hate NES games, and like 1 week ago, I started obsessing over NES games. And now I love the NES, and don't love the SNES. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, he's a weirdo.
But anyway, the reason I brought up the comparison to Castlevania Symphony of the Night is that when I first began discussing this game with Jordan, a lot of the discussion, and I hate to say it, but a lot of the discussion was me comparing Super Metroid to Dark Souls. And to this day, I hold that I would much sooner compare Super Metroid to Dark Souls than to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The way that you progress, the way that you master Super Metroid, everything Jordan has been and will talk about in terms of his relationship with Super Metroid deeply reminds me of how I engage with Dark Souls. But I guess I'll save the majority of that for when we do a Dark Souls video. But I think this is a very Dark Souls-y game, and I would say that Dark Souls is for me what Super Metroid is for Jordan.
This is kind of a thing you'll notice about me. I gravitate quite a bit towards 2D games, and there's a certain philosophy behind games made in this era, this sort of unwillingness, this respect for the player that the game has, and it's the perfect length, its pacing just keeps on throwing new kinds of things at you. I've seen a lot of people compare Super Metroid to Hollow Knight, or discussing that Hollow Knight is quote-unquote the best Metroidvania.
On the table. I think Hollow Knight's boring. I think it's boring aesthetically. I don't find it very interesting. It's not nearly as fun to play as Dark Souls. Sorry. That's the truth. That's how I feel.
I like Hollow Knight more.
I hate to say it.
I like Hollow Knight more than Chad does, but I think that this game...
I don't get it. I don't
just
get Hollow Knight.
has such a wider range of tones, and it's like the movement mechanics are so much more nuanced and compelling to me. As soon as you throw momentum into a 2D game, you've got me. Like, I love being able to tweak and play with my momentum to reach new areas like I did there. I had to get a bit of a running start on that frozen enemy. It's just
Maybe you should
genius
just
that you can
discuss
freeze
your.
that you can freeze enemies in this game and use them as platforms. This came from the first game,
Yeah, that's
but
really
you can
cool.
wall jump off of them here. And the additions to the moveset just add so much more nuance to every single
The run button
bit
is
of
great.
ability that you have. Anyway,
Look at that running animation. Oh my god.
so many
so
frames.
good.
What did you have in mind that you were going to
Maybe you
mention?
should discuss your top 7 favorite games.
Oh, here and now?
Yeah, I think this is a good time to do that. It's relevant. You don't need to. Just list. You don't need to worry about ordering. Just list off some of your favorite games.
All right. Well, I guess it's good to establish early on what you can expect from my personal taste, what my bias is, what I gravitate toward, and I'm a retro fiend. My favorite games are largely within like the early 90s range, mid 90s. Super Metroid is, as I've mentioned, already like one of my absolute favorites of all time, followed by, or maybe sitting there alongside rather, Earthbound. We've already talked about Dragon Quest III, Super Mario Brothers 3, A Link to the Past, Panzer Dragoons Vi.
Oh, now that's a game.
Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger. We've got, I mean, Cave Stories in there.
I think you got the big ones out of the way there.
Alien Soldier, Castlevania, Rondo of Blood, Hyper Light Drifter. I like a lot of video games. Some of them aren't. Some of them are new. I like.
None of us are too huge on newer games.
Well, I'm not against newer games at all. I've liked many newer games I've played, but I can't help but gravitate.
Celeste is pretty new.
Celeste is fantastic. I absolutely gravitate toward many of these ancient design philosophy things, and you know, I am fully aware that many of these ideas, many of the things that led them to make these games the way that they are were a result of experiments that they would later, like they were striving here in Super Metroid, in A Link to the Past, and many of my favorite games for bigger and better things, but I think what they maybe
a lot of these games are just Super, their first games.
Right.
Super The Legend of Zelda 1, Super Metroid 1. Even Kirby got a Super Kirby. That game was on the NES.
I still like Majora's Mask quite a bit, though.
Majora's Mask is like our shared. If we were to pool our favorite games, Majora's Mask is like our shared favorite game.
There we go.
But when I first met Jordan, I was still in. I didn't really know anything about game design. Like I kind of knew a bit more than maybe your super average layman, but I'd like never played a SNES game in my life or anything really much earlier than Wii. And I didn't think about game design much at all, but I met Jordan and it instantly we immediately hit it off and constantly talked about game design, especially Super Metroid and Dark Souls.
And we're still doing it to this day.
And I have a lot more experience playing online multiplayer games. Like, I played a ton. I've played thousands and thousands of hours of League of Legends. And Team Fortress 2, I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours in. I've got experience in MMOs. And I kind of, like, for the longest time, I mostly played online games. I didn't really play single-player games that much. I still loved The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, Pokemon Diamond, but Dark Souls was one of them. But I only
got the-
sort of recently got into Dark Souls by the time I met Jordan.
I got the wave beam,
And-
which let me shoot through walls so I can get to this area before they expect me to. Or at least I think they did expect players to figure that out. They don't expect you to do it the first time. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. God, this game's beautiful sometimes. What was I saying? Oh,
All the time.
I'm very grateful to both Jordan and Super Metroid for opening my eyes to the just how fascinating game design is. And I don't know if I'd call myself an expert, but I'm definitely an expert on game design now. Thanks to Super Metroid, it's...
Did you say you don't know if you would call yourself an expert and then you called yourself an expert?
Yeah, I'd say I'm an expert, but
Okay.
there's no way I can call myself an expert.
Oh,
Anyway,
cool.
what was I talking about? I was talking about favorite games. I can't talk over this. This is Crocomire.
Rockomeyer.
Oh my god, this might be my favorite boss in the game that isn't Ridley.
Now, some of you Super Metroid savants in the audience will know that I didn't have to beat Spore Spawn. I don't need to beat Crocomire to beat the game. But I'm doing it anyway just to show it off. Because I think it would be a shame to make a Super Metroid video without having all of these
Crocomire and
bosses.
Spore Spawn. These bosses are amazing. I
Just
love the
wouldn't-
bosses in Super Metroid.
This would not be complete if I didn't
Like in A Link to
show
the
them off.
Past. Like in A Link to the Past, one of my absolute favorite aspects of these two games is the bosses. He falls into the lava.
There's this Mortal Kombat style
Oh
death.
my god. It's so brutal. It feels terrible.
The bubbles go that way. But we're gonna go this way because something's drawing me over here. Now, if I weren't a wall jumper, I could probably use the high jump boots to get up, but it's strongly suggesting to me that I should come back when I have whatever item I can use,
To go on that ceiling.
yeah, to get onto that thing.
If you know how to wall jump and you see that there's a little spot there, you can just wall jump and get it.
Phase
Oh
2,
my
here we
God.
go! Oh. Yeah.
Wow, it's such a good fake out. Look at
Poor
they
guy.
had his skeletal like. How is he even moving? He's just somehow moving, and he's able to have this desperate last attempt to survive. It's terrible. It's
Yeah.
almost like the game wants you to skip Crocomire because it
wants you to
feels like
pity
he
him.
doesn't. It's really terrifying.
And I only went down there to kill him, so...
You're a monster.
I am a monster. I didn't
Well, I
have...
want
I'm
to
not going
say-
to get the grapple beam in this.
No, you don't need it.
I didn't have to go over that.
My tastes in games used to be far different, and over the past few years, they've evolved dramatically.
Just in the
and-
last few months.
Yeah, my tastes are pretty. My tastes are not very set in stone. At least they're not as confident as Jordan's tastes are. My opinions fluctuate a lot over time, but my current favorite games would include the likes of The Legend of Zelda, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Dragon Quest IV, Dragon Quest III, Panzer Dragoon 1, 2, and 3, Pokemon Crystal, Pokemon Emerald, what am I missing? Final Fantasy VII, the vanilla World of Warcraft experience, which I will... That's a whole fucking can of worms. But, what else am I missing? Dark Souls 3. But my favorite games, they're kind of Monster Hunter. That's another one. My favorite games feel a lot more hodgepodge, a lot more kind of assorted and confused, maybe, than Jordan's favorite games
I have
are.
a broader
and that
range
probably-
of
probably-
of taste
well, I
than
wouldn't say
I
it's
do.
broader. I think it speaks to how I'm not really as sure what I make of video games, what kind of games I love as Jordan is.
Maybe so.
So, but I need to make clear that even if SNES games might not, be my sort of cup of tea, I owe a lot to SNES games. I owe a lot to Super Metroid, Chrono Trigger, A Link to the Past. Jordan's the way that I perceive video games, my life has been forever altered by Jordan.
Oh.
And in enormous part, it's because of Super Metroid. Like, this is the only other game that compares as far as like a game that is central to our friendship is Donkey Kong Country, and that's because a bunch of times we would turn on Donkey Kong Country, and I sucked at it, and we'd have like
we played we ripped through Donkey Kong Country in a single sitting, and we had gone insane by the end.
Yeah, it was not easy, but we've had some great fun with Donkey Kong Country.
So now we're gonna head back up here. Upgrades in tow. Yeah, if I had gone after Fantoon without the Varia suit, I would have been taking double damage against him, and I don't know if I'm prepared for that. Now there's Ridley on piano.
Yeah, one of the oldest jokes in our friendship is that this piano is being played by Ridley.
Come on,
I think that was an original joke, right?
Yeah,
we made that joke like 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's gotta be him.
It's gotta be him.
3 or 4 years ago, yeah.
Feels like I've known you my whole life.
These elevator transitions they're just so iconic.
I like
there
them
are
a lot.
mods that speed them up, and I would not have it any other way.
Yeah, why would you speed up? People gotta relax. They gotta get some patience. The game's pacing is like it's Super Metroid played by someone who's very, very familiar with it, or even just like has played it once or twice before, is a completely different game than it is for someone who's never played Super Metroid.
Right, and I really commend that about it, because it offers like so many kinds of play styles. It's conducive to like, it becomes a completely different game the first time, from the second time, from the third time, depending on your routing, depending on which bosses you decide to kill in which order. It's really something. I want to show off the shine spark.
So cool. That's awesome.
I don't have to go in here, but we're gonna do it. That's a trick that's taught to you by a set of animals in kind of hiding underground in this game. There are animals that will teach you how to do the wall jump, how to do the shine spark, and they're both quite simple. But I really like how those moves are demonstrated to you by in-game characters.
That's really clever. I don't know if I even found the animals when I first played the game, but I picked up a lot of tricks. Like, I knew about a lot of things in the game because you talked about them, or I watched a video where someone mentioned them, or I saw someone do a thing once. And it, like in so many games where information is power, like in Dark Souls, in Zelda 2, in A Link to the Past, in Dragon Quest 3, it takes on a sort of social aspect where you're encouraged to, and it's very fun to discuss these games with people and share tips and secrets and tricks in a really natural sort of way. I wouldn't have it any other way that I played this game first as a sort of video game design awakening alongside you.
In the Metroid 2 video, I note briefly the differences in the jumping, in the controls, the basic mechanics that change between the classic games and the GBA games.
You just did a wing smash.
I did a wing smash. And this is just one way to get across this room. You can actually make a wall jump across that over that pillar. And I've done it
Wow.
several times to
That's
get to
cool.
Fantoon early. It's very difficult to do, but it's great. This is another great moment. Again, the GBA games don't have like run buttons. They don't allow you to tweak your momentum, and that means that moments like this aren't possible. What the game wants you to do is or on a first playthrough, is to use the grapple beam to get over here. And likely a player will probably have the high jump boots equipped, and with them equipped, they're just going to go too high to cross that gap. But if you turn them off, or just not get them, you can cross this gap just fine. Now, it's kind of a tricky jump to make. I fell into the water there. But that it's even possible that one of the solutions in the game is either not getting or turning off an item is just it's so cool to me. That sometimes what you've got to do is to alter yourself in ways that you might not expect. The solutions to problems aren't as black and white as they look on the surface.
Even just containing that one moment means that your upgrades in this game are not always mere like direct upgrades. They are alternative abilities that you have that may or may not, literally speaking at least, be an upgrade.
I love this moment because the electricity is off, so the save point doesn't work.
The save point is off. That's really cool.
We arrive on the wrecked ship. We have another little moment where we get this skittering vermin. We have ghosts for maybe, I think, say for Prime, like the only time in the main series where we encounter kind of weird fantasy element.
But so, for me at least, so well does Super Metroid craft a believable setting in the world that I don't even know if I believe that these are ghosts. I believe that they are somehow completely scientific biological entities, as dumb as that may be, just because of like as I imagine Samus herself might feel. I refuse to believe that these are real ghosts. They must have an explanation.
Well, how do you explain Fantoon, Chad?
I have no idea, but I could make some guesses.
Now this is Fantoon if you haven't picked it up.
Yeah, this guy rules. One of the harder bosses.
He's a pretty tricky boss, especially if you don't have... Especially if you come here early before fighting Frayed, before getting the Varia suit and a couple of other little... I
love the sound effect.
Little upgrades. You can nab extra energy tanks. And he kind of plays with your expectations in a way, because you're not supposed to use... Well, you're heavily punished for using super missiles against him. He'll unleash a massive counterattack, which you can jump through using... if you charge up a shot and jump through it, you can pass through unscathed.
Such a tight room, too. The way that enemies change color as they lose health is very cool. It's a great way to show the player that the enemy is losing HP without including an enemy HP bar.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been very Metroid to include one.
I wonder, what's the first game that did something like that, I wonder? Must have been done really early on. That is a very important aspect of Monster Hunter. You don't see the monsters as health bars in Monster Hunter. You have to infer their health based on how much damage you assume you are doing, and based on the monsters' actions and exhaustion.
If you want to look at it that way, like, the Koopalings in Mario 3 don't have health bars, but you know intuitively they're going to die in 3 hits.
Sure, but that is a much more literal, you hit them 3 times.
Sure.
Monster Hunter depends entirely on your weapon type and your individual weapon and your individual attacks.
Fantoon.
But what I love is on the box art of Super Metroid, both versions I believe display Ridley in a bright red coloration. I mean, that might just be the American version.
Only the North American one.
They make him bright red on the box art, which is what Ridley looks like when his health is very low, which I think is really awesome of them to do.
And they weaponize that piece of the visual language later on.
On the topic of oh yeah, they do. That's really good. On the topic of box art, Super Metroid is one of the absolute best box arts of all time.
Oh yeah.
Right up there with the first 5 Dragon Quests.
Yeah, all of them have fantastic box art. My favorite might just be 3, but 4 and 5 have box arts to rival it.
My favorite is 3 or 4's, but the more I look at Dragon Quest 4's box art, the more I think it is my favorite. But 3's is real good. Listen to the sounds of... Was that sound playing earlier?
No.
So that's now that the ship has been powered on with the absence of Phantoon. The ship has ironically come to life.
So it's only been an hour, but we've gone to so many places.
Wow.
Fought so many bosses. It just keeps it rolling.
I compare it to Dark Souls, but make no mistake, this game is nothing at all like Dark Souls.
Now I know it might seem odd to talk about pacing when I'm ripping through it.
He's basically speedrunning it.
But
which is not a first player's experience.
It's not, but note that even if you're not going through it as quickly as I am now, there's still a rhythm to the way that new places and new ideas are introduced. If you were to slow down my playthrough by like 50%, there would still be a steady stream of new locations and enemies.
New enemies, combat scenarios, items, upgrades.
Yeah. It never...
It is a really well-designed map. That is something that is actually like Dark Souls. Both of these two games have really, really good maps. Dark Souls' map is like a bit more linear 3D Super Metroid map. Dark Souls could not exist without Super Metroid. Whoa! That is a really well-hidden one. That's awesome.
You don't have to Shine Spark to get it. There are these guys you can ride up there.
Yeah, those little jet guys.
But, I know my stuff.
Like, look at the way the backgrounds here are all crumbling apart, because we're on the surface, so the rock is exposed to the whatever winds that might exist on this planet and the erosion from those elements. We go inside and there's this little cave full of little pits for animals to live in. That guy's hanging out on top of this scaffolding. Like, this feels like such a well-realized real place. And not a lot of games up to this point really pulled that off. Especially not games outside of the Metroid franchise.
And we have this moment. A mysterious bit of visual storytelling.
What is this guy doing in the wrecked ship?
Never quite learn the nature of this mysterious moving statue. You can only connect it loosely to Samus's heritage as a person raised by these alien Chozo beings.
It's a piece of the game to be interpreted. It is interpretive, vague lore.
And it doesn't really mind whether you get it or not. It just happens.
Wordlessly, it happens.
Push R2-D2s into the spikes.
Whoa, what's in here? Whoa! That's cool.
Get another reserve tank?
Yeah, I don't really know a tenth of the things that Jordan knows about this game.
I've played this game forwards and backwards. I've played it 100%. I've played it...
Randomized?
My lowest percent, I think, is like in the like 39, 40. I played it randomized with A Link to the Past. That's a blast. Everybody should try that if you like both games.
I suck at, like, for some reason it bothers me to play modded games. I don't know what that deal is.
Well, before we talk about that, we just got the gravity suit.
We don't need to talk about that.
Maybe we don't. We got the gravity suit, and it allows you to move freely underwater, which...
And it feels so good because of how garbage it feels to move through water before getting it.
That's... Metroid always endeavors to set up these little plants and payoffs in ways that maybe you don't notice at the beginning. Like how... You know maybe that you'll be able to traverse water. You don't know quite how, or that it's going to be this satisfying or this fluid. Now, the formal entrance to Meridia is to the right, but I'm not gonna go over there. There's another way to get there. I forget where. Okay, here it is.
That's an example of the game, like, being aware of its camera placement. Oh, but you've been here before, so you would... Oh, no, you haven't been here before. That was totally... In this room you've been here?
I've been here. We're gonna go back down to Red Bryn Star.
Oh, this was a new pathway that you just knew about, and the game was hiding it with the camera angle.
It was hiding it.
It is hiding with the camera angle, but because you knew it was there, you were able to uncover it again.
Yep.
I also believe that the deeper, literally speaking, the lower down you get in this game, the hotter it gets, the more you start seeing lava, until it's just a complete lava mess, and every single room is lit by lava.
Oh man, we might beat this entire game. We might play through the whole thing.
Why not? Just go for it. Super Metroid. What are we gonna do? Not keep going?
I don't think I'll be able to stop myself.
I love that those guys... I remember one of my earliest observations was those enemies that hang out on the ceiling.
If I want to, I could just turn off the ice beam. Kill these guys in one hit instead of two. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say, I like those guys that hang out on the ceiling, and they're... Before you get too close to them, they start attacking you. They're kind of just rotating, and my idea of that was that it's some kind of means of them staying warm.
Could be. I'd imagine it's pretty warm down here.
I don't know how much thought went into the sense behind the enemy designs and the ecology of the setting, but it feels very real. It feels very well realized.
That's all that really... All that matters is that it feels like it could exist.
Yeah. These don't feel very much like just randomly placed video game enemies. It's how a lot of Castlevania enemies feel. Which is totally fine.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. But I like myself some... I really enjoy getting physically, like, emotionally and visually immersed in a game. Part of why I love 3D games a lot. I would say I generally like 3D more than 2D as far as aesthetics are concerned, and a big part of that is I just find it easier to become immersed in a 3D space. But as far as 2D games go, not a whole that many do better than Super Metroid does in that regard.
Another room that expects you to use the grapple beam to get across it, but it's also, like, did you notice that slope on that rock? It is directing you, and there aren't that many areas where you can charge up a Shine Spark that easily. It's very aware of the player's limitations and the various ways that you can make your way through a room. That I can't imagine that was an accident.
I mean, it's debatable what things in this game and then games like it were things that the developers had in mind and things they didn't. But at the end of the day, for the most part, doesn't quite matter.
No.
Because even if they didn't intend for you to do a thing, if it's a very interesting thing to do, and it's a result of the game's mechanics,
But in that case,
it feels genuine.
I have an incredible suspicion. Like,
Yeah.
it's a triangle. Do a diagonal shine spark right up to the door. Nothing stopping you.
Something I was going to bring up earlier is that I personally sometimes get a bit like annoyed when, for example, there's that. Oh, look at these fake Metroids. These
the
Metroids.
Yeah, they're being. The manual explains that they're being engineered by the space pirates here.
I mean, what a great way to visually make clear that they're not the Metroids we're used to.
They can't even suck out your energy as easily. Boss time.
Best boss in the game.
Batwoon!
Batwoon!
Just look at him.
I love this
He's
guy.
a pretty happy guy. Look at his goofy grin.
He's beautiful. He uses the same music as Spore Spawn.
To show that he's not really that big a deal.
He's sort of like a mini boss.
Yeah.
God, he's so cool though.
I kind of hit him on the way down too. Did you see
Yeah, that was awesome.
Unfortunately, once you know that you could just kind of stand still and charge shot him, it's not as threatening. But
I like these.
You're not going. I didn't figure that out for a while.
I was going to talk about earlier.
Sometimes
you're presented with things in this game and in other games where you have to make a choice between doing something that just is more beneficial to you for mechanical reasons or for resource reasons against something that is more emotionally or aesthetically satisfying. And the example that I usually use to talk about that is the much earlier segment in this game where Jordan performed the mock ball trick to get earlier super missiles. And in doing so, if you know how to perform the mock ball trick and get these super missiles, you save a lot of time that it would take to get the super missiles by going all the way to Spore Spawn and beating Spore Spawn and getting the super missiles behind him. So speedrunners just kind of completely skip over that, and if I know how to do the mock ball trick, like I know that I really don't need, and the game kind of incentivizes me to not get any more resources than I actually need. I don't need those extra super missiles behind Spore Spawn. And I'm like, well, I really want to fight Spore Spawn. I love Spore Spawn. He's hilarious. He's funny. He's cool. He's interesting. When you kill him, the whole area decomposes alongside him. He's really cool, but I don't really have any mechanical resource-based motivation to fight Spore Spawn if I do the mock ball trick.
It's a bit of a trick. Most spikes that can hurt you are moving, and these ones are not.
Oh. That's a cool way to display that. That's very sneaky.
Yeah.
Another example of this might be, it's a bit of a different example, but in Breath of the Wild, there's a very easy glitch you can perform to have permanent stamina while running. And I know how to do the glitch, and it's really easy to do. And I want to not do the glitch, but I'll save it. I don't want to interrupt this boss
My
fight.
view on that is that you play the way that you like. I think this game does a fairly good job of incentivizing you to go for 100%. A lot of people do feel very strongly that they have to go for 100% completion when they play this game. Here's Dragon.
Oh my god, he's big. He's way bigger than I
massive.
remembered. He's really scary.
Yeah, he's maybe the freakiest looking boss in this game.
He's probably the most impressive design in the entire game.
So if you have the grappling beam, there's a trick you can do to kill him pretty much instantly, as long as you have a little bit of creativity. But And that's completely that's pretty easy to pick up even for a first timer. But
Yeah.
but I didn't because I didn't want to go after it. So I have to fight him in
Look at his.
a little more
He's definitely the
a
best
little
enemy
more
design in the
difficult
game.
fight than I've got
He's so cool.
than I would have had normally.
I mean, we would be incorrect to play this game and not bring up the very heavy Ridley Scott and the alien inspiration behind Metroid.
This guy's definitely big time face hugger vibes.
This is the most Geiger anything in Metroid is this fucking guy.
Yeah, probably.
Look at his skull. He's got all these like
Oh no.
like screaming skull faces on his head, and this disgusting little stinger. Oh, and there's some impeccable. Oh, I'll save it. This guy's got a really good death animation. And we haven't really discussed just the actual core combat mechanics of Super Metroid.
I think they're
And
pretty
we
clear.
we don't really need to, because they, especially if you play the game and just feel how it feels to jump and shoot, they just immediately make sense. They're like a lot of great games.
Oh.
They just make sense, and they just work as intended. They speak for themselves.
And Dragon's children. Bury it. Maybe eat it.
I think they're eating him. They're definitely eating him. It's the cycle of life. It's detritus.
Let me grab the space jump. But as I was saying, I think that for me, the challenge of learning the mock ball, a very skill-based trick that allows you to get an item the same way. Like you can get it by learning the mock ball, you can get it by fighting Spore Spawn. I think that that's a very interesting trade-off because to me they're both equally entertaining challenges. One of them requires more of my reflexes, and if I master it, I can get the super missiles faster. The other is a grander spectacle. But and if I want to, like I did in this
And I don't think
playthrough,
it's a bad
I can
design or anything.
if I want to, like I did in
Want
this
that to be
playthrough,
clear.
I can fight them both. And having more super missiles at the beginning is going to serve me well. Like in my battle against Kraid, I was able to down him pretty quickly because I had 10 super
A
missiles
lot of super missiles.
at
Yeah.
my disposal instead of 5. It's all about the way that you want to go about the game. Super Metroid gives you so many tools to play the way that you want, and if you're willing to take them, if you're willing to learn how to manipulate them, it just kind of tosses you in and trusts you that you're going to be able to handle the responsibility of all of these moves and abilities that it provides.
I definitely wouldn't call it a criticism I have of the game. It's just as far as how I engage with games, it just sort of bothers me because I on one hand I want to engage with Super Metroid in an interesting way, and I want to do the mock ball thing and be rewarded for my ability to execute it. But then I miss out on Spore Spawn, who's a boss I really like, and I could do both, but like in my heart of hearts, I know I don't need the extra super missiles. So there's just kind of a conflict there, and this isn't really a huge issue. This isn't something that that warps like how I experience the game or anything. But this sort of game design, it's very hit or miss for me. It's very, I don't even know. Like in Pokemon games, I play a lot of Pokemon, and Pokemon is so easy. And I pretty much always, I'm doing some kind of thing when I play Pokemon that makes the game harder. I'm utilizing some sort of self-imposed difficulty, self-imposed challenge, and it feels very natural to me in Pokemon to only use the number of potions that my enemy uses, and to not just play the game with one overpowered Pokemon, and to not make a team that is like Snorlax, Zapdos, Articuno, Moltres, Venusaur or something. It feels fitting in that game, but in a game like Super Metroid, at times I'm sort of bothered. I'm sort of annoyed by the conflict I have internally between doing what is mechanically best, what is most valuable to me in terms of the gameplay and the mechanics, versus what I wants to do for aesthetic reasons. It's a hard thing to kind of explain, but I'm bringing it up because it will probably come up again in the future.
Check out this pipe. If you ask me,
rules.
A game like this is short enough and so filled with possibilities that playing it different ways is kind of the joy of it. That I've fought Spore Spawn and I've beaten him numerous times when I wasn't aware of or able to make use of the mockball trick. So it just provides me another way to go about it. That's my view.
Maybe the problem is just that I don't really enjoy the mockball trick that much, actually.
Then you don't have to do it.
But like I know it's there, and I don't know. Anyway, at the very least, Spore Spawn rules.
Well, we're heading for Ridley.
Ridley rules too. Might be the best boss in the game. It's either Ridley
He's definitely probably the most difficult.
Spore Spawn. Spore Spawn could kill Ridley.
See, oftentimes when people discuss the combat in this game, they'll say it's very tanky, and it can be if you're going out of your way to get every single weapon expansion. But as you can see, I've got out of my way to get a few extra pieces of equipment that I wouldn't otherwise get if I was playing just on my own, because I want to keep this going. I'm hoping I don't die on camera, because we want to keep it up, want to keep showing you new things. But you can see that, or maybe you can see, you have to strategize a lot more when you've got less resources on you, and I think that's when Super Metroid's combat starts to shine a lot more. So when you gotta aim a little more precisely, you've gotta make better use of crouching and morph balling and jumping. You saw during my Dragon fight that morph balling at just the right time can allow you to avoid one of those swooping attacks. So normally if you were playing this game, you'd encounter this room a lot earlier, see this yellow door that was mysterious, maybe come back later when you got power bombs, and encounter this.
Oh, this is amazing. This tooth hallway.
You find...
This big Ridley head.
No, you've got to come back here to kill Ridley, because what else could be behind that door?
These are exactly the chest bursters from Alien.
Now, the one thing that might not be super well communicated here is that with the gravity suit you can withstand this lava, but at this point in the game I knew I only had one thing left, so I was coming back here anyway. I kind of just stumbled into it, didn't even register to me when I first played the game.
Well, the gravity suit is also what allows you to traverse water more effectively, right? I think it makes sense that if the suit allows you to move through water without hindrance, it might also allow you to move through this very water-resembling lava without hindrance.
Something that the game doesn't have much of an opportunity to show. Now, we entered through Ridley's Maw, and we are delivering ourselves into his clutches. Look at those hands there. And here's where the music gets intense.
This is the real Super Metroid.
Now, the music from this game would get remixed for a bunch of the future games. In Prime, in AM2 Bar, in Samus Returns, they're constantly remixing music from Super Metroid, and if you've been
not
listening...
just music, but also a lot of aesthetics, like a lot of mechanics. Super Metroid sort of formed the foundation of the following Metroids, much how a lot of series' third entries did, like Dragon Quest 3 or Mario 3 or Zelda 3.
If you've been paying attention to recent announcements, you'll know that Metroid Dread is coming out, and I'm sure that's going to be... I've got my hopes for Metroid Dread. I think that there's Mercury Steam. They proved that they're very competent developers when they I thought Samus Returns was great, even if it wasn't necessarily didn't totally understand the source material it was adapting. But given more time given room to express themselves in a new game, I think that they could do great stuff. But you'll notice in those gameplay videos that the wall jump doesn't really behave quite the same way.
It's a much more linear, much more restrictive wall jump.
It locks you into a trajectory, much like in Zero Mission, like in Fusion. And if you've been watching up to this point, you know how I feel about that. But
we both love the wall jump, though I also think we both understand that there are advantages to implementing a more restricted wall jump.
Catches your super missiles and throws them back at you.
That's really cool. I don't remember that.
He dodges your missiles. He looks like pretty creepy when he turns to face the camera.
Oh, but if you shoot a super missile, him catching it also kind of helps you in a way.
Yeah,
because it means he's not going to do something else. That's really cool. It's not just that it doesn't do any damage to him. He has to catch it, which has it has effects on the battle.
Got a rematch against this guy, and it's a much tougher one than our first encounter at the beginning of the game. It's a nice payoff. And we got him.
You did it.
Yep.
That guy rules. Combat in Super Metroid is pretty much indistinguishable from movement in Super Metroid.
That's kind of how it is in a lot of 2D games, and I think that keeps a lot of people from
very much the thing in Zelda 1. Zelda 1 is that more than any other game.
It keeps a lot of critics and game likers from knowing how to describe combat in 2D video games, because it's often inextricable from the movement and the dodging and the exploration. And because there's no combat system. Like in Ocarina of Time, you Z-target an enemy, and now you're in combat. Now there are a certain number of things that you can do that you're capable of.
Well, I don't think that's the best comparison. I think a better example would be something like a JRPG where traversing an overworld is completely distinct from the combat screen.
Maybe,
in Ocarina of Time, you can fight enemies without Z-targeting.
Well,
nothing has changed. It just sort of slightly
it's true,
alters
but
your movement.
You have moves that are specifically tailored to the combat system in Ocarina of Time that aren't relevant outside of it.
Relevant, but you can always press B and
you can always
do the same as sword moves.
Yeah, but people talk about Dark Souls combat system, for instance. It's you can always do those things, but they're not going to be relevant outside of a combat scenario.
For the most part, yeah. You do technically use attacks to open illusory walls and break some stuff in Dark Souls, but yeah, for the most part, yes.
Where in 2D games like this, almost every part of the moveset is constantly being utilized.
Yeah.
There are very few things that you can do that are exclusively for combat or just for exploration.
In Super Metroid that turns enemies into a platform.
Right.
Which speaks to exactly how linked they are.
Intense rooms like this where the lava's rising, there's an earthquake going on.
This is awesome. I should probably make clear that my absolute favorite form of video game combat, and even if we stretch the definition of combat out very broadly, if we could describe Tetris's gameplay as combat and the gameplay of a visual novel like Tokimeki Memorial as combat, my #1 favorite combat in a video game is the Monster Hunter / Dark Souls style combat.
I don't think you even have to stretch the definition to arrive there.
You don't. I'm just stretching the definition to make clear that amongst every form of video game, I get the most fun out of Monster Hunter, Dark Souls, Ocarina of Time style combat.
Sure.
I believe that Ocarina of Time is the first true incarnation of that combat, though it wasn't properly codified until the release of Monster Hunter in 2004.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I didn't have to do that, I guess.
It took me a long time to really have my mind opened and accept very different, far more streamlined forms of combat, such as in Super Metroid or Zelda 1. For the longest time, I hated NES games, but then I played Kid Icarus Uprising, and I loved it. And then I played Kid Icarus on the NES. Well, I played the 3D Classics version of Kid Icarus on the NES, on the 3DS. And then for some reason, then I realized that I love NES games.
So now this...
I have respect for... Oh, I won't interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, in Super Metroid, you've had this flipping jump the whole time, where you can, if you're moving and jumping, then you can you do this flip, and now it's a form of invulnerability. It was the only way. It was the only way to use the wall jump. It was the only way to use the space jump. But
right?
the screw attack allows you to be completely invulnerable. So now it's a form of dodging. So the jump,
and this is the end of the game.
The jump as an idea is constantly evolving as you progress.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna restock on some tools here.
It's constantly evolving, but the way that you jump is always the same.
Right.
The way that your controls, if you could, that's not exactly the word I want to use, but we can say that your controls stay the same throughout the entire game. What you can do with those controls, and the full extent of your capabilities with those core controls changes and develops throughout the game.
Just gonna get a few more.
This is Super Metroid's take on grinding.
Doesn't take too long. I think maybe it's giving me power bombs now. I don't need too many more missiles here. I'm going to be using the charge attack quite a bit, so. But it's a way to.
So this is the greatest Metroid 1 remake there ever could be. I actually don't know that. I haven't played Metroid 1, and I think I might actually love Metroid 1. I might like Metroid 1 more than Super Metroid.
Full disclosure.
I need to play it to find out.
I've played Metroid 1 a few times. I've tried getting into it. I've made it to Norfair and Brinstar a few times, and... I guess he didn't want me to say what I was going to say about it. He's very defensive
story short,
of Metroid
Jordan
1.
likes Super Metroid more than he likes Metroid 1.
I don't think that's going to come as any kind of surprise to anybody. Metroid 1, I feel like would be fun to... It'd be fun to play with a pen and paper nearby to make maps with.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That's probably how I'll play it.
I've tried starting the game that way. But I haven't gotten serious about it really, so maybe one day I'll get into it. Constantly moving. It's trying to weave in shots. It's
not that different from how a lot of games have. It's not that completely different from Zelda 2's combat or A Link to the Past's combat.
But we've got gravity to work with. We've got different kinds of jumps. We have to aim and fire in the right direction with precision.
So many of these
moves.
I mean, there's a lot of games that have great combat, but the more you look at it, the more you just have to appreciate how hard it is to make a game that just works this well.
You know, I don't think this guy's got a shot in Smash Brothers. I mean, look how big he is.
Yeah, he's too big for Smash Bros. It's unfortunate.
Nah.
On the topic of Smash Bros., I would like to state for the record that at one point in my life, I was the
Oh, no.
17th best Smash Bros. Player in the state of Alaska.
Gotta share your friend code so people can fight you now.
Friend codes suck. Why are they still doing friend codes? It's
Yeah,
terrible.
no idea.
It's kind of cute. I changed my mind. Friend
Oh.
codes are kind of cool because they're kind of like a Castlevania 3 password.
Okay, Castlevania 3 passwords are not that cool. Oh,
Love
we killed him!
Castlevania 3 passwords.
So, I should have been talking about the fight while I was fighting him, but you can hit Ridley with anything that you've got. It's an incredibly dynamic fight where you can use just about anything on him. You could show him what you've learned, how much you've accumulated, no matter how
This is your rematch with Ridley.
no matter how you're playing the game, you can find some way to strike back at him. And here we've got another bit of visual storytelling.
See the capsule that contained the baby Metroid.
It's broken. And Ridley he served as a red herring. He lured me away from the true location of the baby.
Ridley, I gotta talk a little bit about Ridley. I love Ridley. I think he has an incredibly good character design. I love how he's portrayed in this game. He's really fun to fight. He's awesome. He's sick in Smash Bros. I think I just love Ridley as a character. I do think that they've kind of slopped him into some Metroid games where he probably doesn't belong.
Definitely
But
so.
I can also understand why, because he's just so cool. Ridley is just awesome. One of the best video game villains out there.
This is the game where Ridley's importance is best demonstrated. He serves as this massive threat at the beginning, this motivator. You want to chase him down, you want to kill him, and now we arrive at this twist when we finally do. But he's this constant nagging force. Like you see a statue of him when you arrive at Zebes, and all you want to do is
He steals your baby Metroid friend.
if you played Metroid 2, then it's going to be even more devastating. This is where Ridley is best utilized, and it's a little bit odd. Well, it's not surprising, but it is a little annoying that he keeps getting plopped into places he doesn't belong, for the sake of, bolstering this odd rivalry between him and Samus.
Maybe this is controversial, but the same kind of goes for Ganon in Zelda.
Yeah.
I think they kind of overuse, like, we
But I
don't
don't
need
think
Ganon
I don't think
to be in
Ridley
every
is
Zelda
a
game.
Ganon figure, though. I think that
No.
Ridley is a
Well, what's important is that Ridley's not supposed to be a final boss. He's not supposed
Right.
to be the big bad guy. Yet he gets so much, like, he gets kind of, he's a bit overexposed, that he overused as if he were some kind of huge bad guy. He's much cooler as this secondary force.
Yeah. This and now this isn't new, but they made it so that Ridley's responsible for the death of Samus's parents, and I just think it's so much more heavy-handed than the storytelling approach offered by the series at large. That we grow with this
Eating
rivalry.
Samus's parents is a thing that was in the manga,
Right,
manga,
but now
and
it's
everyone knows it because it was in Smash Bros.
It's in
or
Smash
something.
Brothers. That's something that they're constantly touting, that Ridley killed Samus's parents, and I don't think that it's not necessarily wrong. I just don't think it fits very well with the way that these games have such a subtle and visual approach to storytelling. You develop this rivalry between yourself and Ridley just through the gameplay. And I think that's kind of a very special thing about this series, that it's able to do that so effectively that you
It's
don't
like a Smash Bros. Confirmed that Professor Oak is Red's dad.
Yeah, I don't think that would add much to the lore there.
No, it really wouldn't. It's not really necessary.
It's a pretty good moment. Everyone's gonna be in the books.
See, now that we've defeated the four people, the four creatures we saw in that statue in the beginning of the game, our first instinct, if we're using our noggin, is to go check out the statues.
And we've got multiple routes we can use to get back up there. Crucially,
How you get back up there is just up to you.
Super
Just how do
Metroid
you move through this world?
doesn't have teleporters. It doesn't have
Fast travel. Thank
Fast
God.
travel.
I hate fast travel. Don't put fast travel in any games ever. Stop doing fast travel. There's no point.
I don't know if I agree entirely with that.
I hate it. That's not true. Wait, that's not true. There's a couple games with decent fast travel. But
yeah, no, I think you. I don't
but
even think you agree. But
a lot of games where fast travel really bugs me. Like, I don't want fast travel in Breath of the Wild. I don't. Let me ride a horse. Make horses
there should at least be much. There should at least be fewer fast travel points. But the point is, like, Super Metroid makes exploring these areas increasingly entertaining with every power-up you get.
And with that, as your skill increases, as you get more comfortable with the controls and your movement abilities, being told, okay, well, now go from point A to point B, or rather more like from point B, the Ridley fight arena, to point A, the statues, it becomes a very interesting task because of just how freeform and flowing and fluid movement is through this game's map and with this game's movement.
It asks you how much you've learned about how to navigate the setting and the, how good you've gotten at maneuvering Samus around these environments.
How good you've gotten at being Samus.
I've gotten alright.
You're pretty good at being Samus.
You're pretty good.
You're pretty good. David Hayter definitely wins best video game voice actor of all time.
He's up there.
I'm not even convinced he's acting. I think it's real.
Nah,
I think Metal Gear Solid is real.
Anime is real.
Yeah, your ship functions as a save point and restore station.
When I first played this game and broke out onto the surface from Red Brinstar, are you tapping on something?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear it.
I was moving my headphones.
Okay. And I broke out onto the surface. It was such a revelation to know that I had. There was this incredible joy, and I'm sure many players associate with this kind of joy with Dark Souls, but but for me, it's all Super Metroid. It's just that.
It's definitely
like knowing that your map has looped around and there's so many areas that I can now access, and it just keeps doing that again and again, showing new connections between areas that you didn't know were connected. It bolsters this idea of this interconnected world. I want to show this off. We've gotten through the game pretty quickly at this point, so I think we can afford to try a little bit of trickery. This is a fun little diversion.
Uh-oh.
That's one of the best shine sparks in the game.
That's so cool.
And it's just there. I mean, otherwise you could use power bombs. You could use, I think, just regular morph ball bombs to get through there. But I mean, you want to use the shine spark.
Yeah.
And it sets up this beautiful opportunity for you to do it.
It's important that you don't need to. It's just one of multiple ways you can tackle that short little traversal segment.
And it's one of many reasons I'm in love with Super Metroid.
I've never seen that guy on the ceiling anywhere else in the game.
He might not be.
I might be wrong.
These two missiles have caused me a bit of worry in 100% playthroughs of this game. Can I get the other one? Impossible for me at this point. No, can't get it. You can get both of them in one shot, but it's... Oop. Hey, buddy.
What's the guy sitting there for?
Sitting in the wall.
And we've made it back to the very familiar vertical hallway leading to the statue room.
What do you know? It's all connected.
See, the best thing about Dark Souls is the map. And I'd have to be a fool not to recognize that that map would not be what it is without Super Metroid.
There's just no way. No way at all.
We should maybe we just do Dark Souls next. Maybe that's our next video.
I've got to beat that game first. I have offered none of my opinions on Dark Souls in this video. And I do not plan to.
I can do it for you. Don't make me.
I won't.
Okay.
You told.
I like the little visual with the water. It looks like the water. They're doing a little perspective trickery with the water.
The coolest
up there.
elevator in the game.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. But where does it lead?
There's only one way.
So mark the first game we play start to finish on KAJAM.
It's probably one of
Which speaks
very
to...
few that we will finish in one sitting because it's not very
just
long.
because of how well paced it is and the nature of it, the game itself. These are real Metroids, right?
Yeah, these are real Metroids that have been cloned from the last Metroid.
They're shooting those Cheerios at you.
But we've only got one Metroid that we care about.
Yeah. This place feels very distinct.
These ones are hostile. Can't get along with them.
Feels very distinct from all the other locations in the game.
Cannot reason with it. And it will not stop until you are dead. Oop.
But they're so
It's a good
cool.
thing one of them got me.
Such a good enemy design. Metroids are just really cool. They deserve to be the title of the franchise. Something that we touched on earlier is just how, or a couple times, we touched on just how well the Metroid franchise maintains continuity in its narrative. The first 4 Metroid games are very much so like they pick up on where the last one left off, and the events of the previous game inform the events of the following game. You've got the Prime series, which is a bit of a diversion, but it's interesting to note that Metroid Dread has been said thus far by at least one person. I don't know who said
Yoshio
it. Sakamoto. Okay, he said that Metroid 5, Metroid Dread would be the end of this story, and it's a pretty shocking revelation because this franchise has existed within this specific continuing story for such a long time. It is nothing at all like how Mario and Zelda handle their stories.
Not at all. Dad, there used to be a boss fight here. I'm scared. Something took it out before I did.
Oh, you're okay. There's nothing in here.
Yeah, very few games handle... are like the continuing adventures of a single character.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe East is.
I mean, yes.
I mean, Wise. What the hell is that?
It's so big. It's so big.
Is that the Super Metroid? Oh my god.
Oh my god, that is the Super Metroid. I've never thought of that for real, seriously. Oh. You've been left with 1 health.
Where have we heard that alarm before? Where has it heard that alarm before?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I was gonna leave it up to our viewers, but...
I don't know if they know.
At the beginning of the game, Ridley hit us hard enough that it sounded our suit's alarm, and there was only one Metroid around to hear it.
The baby. Listen to this weirdo Metroid 2 music. Like these eye doors, we haven't mentioned them at all.
Oh yeah. Well, they at least build some anticipation for the coming boss ahead. I'm gonna save here because it is possible to die in this next part, and I wouldn't want to go all the way back and ruin the suspense.
This area does a really good job. Just the architecture and the visuals of the backgrounds just feel completely distinct. This feels horrifying. This feels like the last area of the game.
Maybe it's kind of late to discuss this, but the way that Metroid uses colored doors, it's kind of odd if you think about it. Like, because it feels like an arbitrary way to log off progress just by saying, oh, you don't have the correct key to open this door. And I think that there are things in this game I could criticize, how it locks off certain areas kind of for odd reasons, but it strikes this really good balance between areas that are locked behind doors and areas that are locked behind player skill. And sometimes both. Sometimes there's an area that can be reached in several ways. Sometimes there's the item that you need to open that door can be reached in several ways. And I think that Super Metroid deserves some credit for offering all of these. I mean, it's often like the Metroidvania. I'm not even talking about Mother Brain right now. The Metroidvania subgenre is like it took this idea of locks and keys to its absolute limit, but it forgot all of the ways that Super Metroid. Oh my god!
Such a good song.
So Mother Brain turns into a giant cybernetic T-Rex when it's knocked off of life support.
This is
noted.
This is definitely not something that she could do in the first game.
Wouldn't even be technically possible.
This is Super Mother Brain.
So Super Metroid is trying to be extremely better than its predecessors.
If Metroid 2's Final Boss says anything, maybe it says that this could have existed on the NES.
No, it could not have.
I don't know.
I hate to break. It could not have existed at the time they were making Metroid. They didn't have chips strong enough to make a game like Super Mario Bros. 3 yet.
Oh my god.
Holy crap.
It's dragging you upward. God, it's so cool.
And for the first time in the game, I have lost control of Samus in a gameplay section. She's too weak. She can't stand up. She's winded from this attack. And there it is. What an iconic scene.
God, she's so gross.
Just drooling on the ground. She's completely immobilized. We've seen that color before, the shade that those bosses turned into when the Metroid must have sucked them dry. But here Chekhov's gun fires, because we learned at the beginning of the game that the Metroids could be used for good. And we didn't know how. And we're learning completely through gameplay. Do something that's consequential to us. And as the Metroid is getting hit by Mother Brain, its colors are muting until it dies. And it bestows upon us the greatest weapon in the entire game.
And this, what I believe is the theme of Samus Aran begins to play.
In place of Mother Brain's theme, and it's just a complete curb stomp. Just the impact, how her neck snaps back every time.
Yeah. I mean, it looks pretty damn good, but it feels even damn better.
Even damn gooder. And the game ends the way it began. Mother Brain activates a self-destruct sequence, and this time it's on a planetary scale. And just like the rest of the game, there are multiple ways to get through it.
Wow, that's really cool.
Metroid never stops. Super Metroid
Yeah, it doesn't.
keeps laying on incredible moments, and so many that I didn't show in favor of having a pretty reasonably length episode for Super Metroid. This is a big game. It's my favorite to play, one of my favorites to talk about. There's so much to say, but we don't want to draw this out too long. Much like the game, it's over all too soon.
Perhaps the best way to demonstrate just how much I love Metroid 2 is to right now, while looking at this, and after watching the entire rest of the game, to say that Metroid 2 is better than this.
Well, you are very wrong, but I respect your wrongness. Now, we haven't seen the animals for the entire game, but I'm gonna right that wrong. Go into this little hole where we fought the statue at the beginning of the game. And these guys are trapped here, but we can save them. They escaped through that way.
They look like Chrono Trigger monsters.
And if we're paying attention, we might just be able to catch him in the end screen.
Not only will Ridley return in the franchise after we exploded him earlier, but this entire planet is going to explode, and yet Ridley will return. Which I think is it's pretty cool, but I would get if someone thought it's kinda dumb.
Well, I'm glad you get me then. It's kind of sad to watch such a cohesive world crack apart and explode.
Perhaps the most Dark Souls moment of Super Metroid.
Alright. Enough of the Dark Souls comparisons. No.
Never. Never.
Look at the right. Look over there. The animals escaped on the wrecked ship.
I sure hope nothing bad comes of them escaping.
That'll be fine. Unless you ask Matt Pat.
Oh my god, tell me to not talk about Dark Souls. Can't say that in the video. The M word.
It's the one time.
Is Yuji Horii in these credits too? Yuji Horii's in the credits of Metroid 2.
I don't think we'll find it, but we might find a misspelled Gunpei Yokoi.
Oh, with an M?
With an M.
I remember that.
Incredible job, object designers. Super Metroid is the baseline for me. Everything that it does is just in my DNA.
This is the Jordan game.
As a player, as an aspiring designer, it is my textbook. And I know so many designers, so many indie developers look at this game and they bring out the superficial elements, things that I consider to be not really core to Super Metroid's appeal, at least for me. The lock and key mechanisms and the design, the backtracking, having sort of a foreboding atmosphere. Those are all great things, and Super Metroid has some of the best examples of them. But what makes Super Metroid so incredible to me is just the level at which it allows you to ascend. The player can so thoroughly master its navigation. There are so many ways up and around it, and I've talked about it thoroughly by now.
Super Metroid makes you feel like Metroid.
Sure. It's just such a such a powerful game. No matter how you play it, it always feels like it's yours. Because there's... The only thing keeping you from achieving the true ending in this game is your own knowledge and skill. And it never fails. It never fails to be rewarding to me.
Though Super Metroid is not really truly a game that I love, it was my game design tutorial and a game that formed the scaffolding of my friendship with Jordan.
There's our girl. Super Metroid's willingness to let you explore it inside and out, its respect for the player, its hidden skills, there's just way too much to say about Super Metroid. I could gush forever, but to suffice it to say that I consider it the best game of all time. I think that its appeal has been vastly misinterpreted, at least its appeal to me. I don't think that I've discovered that I don't know if I'm really that big a Metroidvania fan. I've played other games in the genre, but they don't strike me the way Super Metroid does, and it's because the things that make it great aren't the things that are layered onto the surface, that you can find a missile to open a red door, but that like all of the little tricks, all of the ways that the level design accommodate so many approaches, that's the true beauty of Super Metroid to me.
To me, it's just that Samus is hot. That's definitely my favorite thing in Super Metroid. Cut that from the video. Edit that out of the video. We
have been KAJAM.
We have been KAJAM.
Thank you so much. This has been Super Metroid. Good night.
Have a good night.